Now, Jamie will be joined by Sean, Pia and Leo to have our panel discussion, which will be ably facilitated once again by Mr. Manu Caddy. We'll hand it over to you, Manu. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora mātai. Thanks, everybody. As you can see, Pia and I are together next door to my place in the Wharenui because we're having some internet issues at home, and she was having internet issues at her place. The joys of rural life. And our boys are hooning around on motorbikes like Jamie's, so probably going to have a bit of background noise as well. But we've run way over time, and so we're going to cut question time and certainly lunch break. But we did have a few really good questions. So there's quite a bit of time at the end of the day for discussion, and I know some presenters, this will be the only chance to grab them, so we'll try and get through some of those questions now. But Leo, one of the questions was around the 50-year cap on native species carbon farming, making a contribution. What options are there for long-term contribution to cash flow post that period into generational wealth?
Yeah, kia ora Manu. So intergenerationally, obviously we have the carbon revenue over the 50 years, but we've heard a lot that natives operate on a far longer timescale than that. So realistically, you're going to get carbon revenue well into the future beyond that 50 years. But we have all those things which are already happening on the coast. We have the Manuka honey. There's a new permanent category being introduced into the ETS, which will allow small selective harvesting, and for the really high value timbers in a certain forest, that'll become economic as well. There's lots of research being done by Scion around underplanting, whether it be in exotic forests with kawakawa, for example. And I know Hikurangi Enterprises has really spearheaded research into manuka and kanuka oil as well, and trying to develop markets for those sort of resources as well. Then we have the other slightly more intangible options intergenerationally around tourism and aesthetics and amenity and stuff, which Jamie has just covered. So plenty of options beyond just the carbon revenue.
Sean.
Kia ora Manu. Yeah, just to reiterate and amplify Leo's comments, I mean, discussions I've had with MPI officials about, well, what happens post 50 years and you've still got a project that needs to generate revenue, and their indication was that as long as your project is demonstrably delivering positive carbon benefits, it'll continue to have access to carbon credits, but that just hasn't been legislated at the moment. So that's the first thing, and we're assuming that will happen. Well, we have to, because otherwise it would, a 50-year window is really not long enough, especially for native forests that are going to be sequestering carbon for a much longer, for more than double that. Secondly, we see it as really important for carbon revenues in that first 50 years to be very carefully planned for how they are spent, and ideally reinvested in things that will have a much longer life than a carbon project, because your carbon credit factory only has a limited life, even if it is 100 years, or what happens in year 101. And if we spend all of that money in that 100 years, then you've got very little to do in year 101 onwards. Whereas if you reinvest that carbon revenue in other enterprise opportunities, as well as plant a forest that's going to have a revenue in the future. For example, if you plant lots of high-valued native species in the forest, and if the covenant that you put on the land allows you to take a small percentage of those trees in the future, then you can maintain cash flows into the very long term. And we see that planning part of it as just a key part of the puzzle. Thanks.
Thank you. Pia, there was a question for you around the enablers for Māori landowners interested in the ETS, and whether your research had identified some of those mechanisms that make it easier, or what needs to be put in place for whānau to understand and get more involved.
Yeah, to me, I kind of brushed over that, but succinctly, enablers around the points that Sean and Jamie covered about the actual steps of going through things. So the detail that Sean did in those Northland project and the Southland project, that's the level of detail we need to get to, and we need to communicate that in a multiple ownership setting to get everyone on the same page. And us Māori landowners getting better at really evaluating dollars or numbers with our value for Māori, Kaitikitanga, Ahika, all those co-benefits that we're looking for, all those multiple values that we associate with our whenua. So getting us on the one page, communicating that, and maximising or optimising relationships all the way through, the enablers are broadly in that framework.
Awesome. And Sean, how do you characterise the ease of access into the ETS? Feedback from a number in the industry is that Tururako is making it very difficult. Is that your experience?
If I were as a government that said there's a climate emergency and that we need to build climate resilient landscapes fast and create a carbon credit engine that will sequester lots of carbon to meet our Paris Agreement obligations, I would be doing everything to make it easier than it is now to do registration under the ETS. There are so many barriers that I would love to spend time listing that I won't just now, but they are deeply, deeply frustrating, and they're deeply incompatible with an aspiration to respond to a climate emergency as if it was actually an emergency. So yeah, huge barriers, and I won't list them here, but I'm very happy to engage in discussions with people offline. And I've got recommendations that I've been making to government on this. And ideally, if everybody is on the same page about what our frustrations are and also what we think the solutions are, and I've got plenty of examples of solutions that I'm putting forward, then we might increase the probability of the government actually waking up to the fact that some simple things just need to change.
Well, thank you very much. Again, thank you to our speakers. Sorry, we don't have more time for the Q&A, but there is a bit of space at the end of the day, but you know who they are now. Get in touch. So yeah, thank you very much, Jamie, Pia, Sean and Leo. Yeah, well, I think we're going to a lunch break.
Kia ora, Manu.
For about 1 minute, and then we're back. Trying to make
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for listening.
Ka pai. Thanks very much, Manu, and thank you to all of our guests, and thank you for tuning in e te whānau. We are going to take a lunch break now, and we are going to be back with you at 1:30 this afternoon. So look forward to you joining us back on Recloaking the Whenua. Kia mau tonu maira. Back soon.